Hello, my name's Colin Crithers, and I'm a student reporter and broadcaster at the University of Iowa. As a journalist, my job is to tell stories, while also balancing everything else going on in my life as a student. But no one tells our stories. So, my goal is to tell the stories of the student journalists, broadcasters, and storytellers all across the country. Let's walk the student beat. Welcome in. Today, we're walking the student beat with Ryan Martin of Maryland. Ryan, how's it going today?
Hey, Colin, I'm doing well. Excited to be here. Excited to appreciate you having me on.
Absolutely. Thanks for joining me, spending some time this morning. And for reference, for those listening, we are recording on Friday at 8 a.m. on August 22nd. So making sure we set apart some time. And I think there's some reason for that. We'll get into it. But Ryan, if you don't mind just sharing a little bit more about yourself, your background, and the journalistic outlets you've worked with.
Sure. Yeah. So I will be a rising junior at the University of Maryland. Really excited to get back to College Park next week. I'm originally from around the Boston area, so made that jump down to the Big Ten, but it's been a lot of fun so far through 2 years. As you know, like being in the Big Ten for student broadcasting is a ton of fun. The opportunities that we have are really great. Big Ten Plus is really big at Maryland, so I've had a lot of fun, being behind the scenes a little bit, being producer, director, and then also being a play-by-play broadcaster at Maryland. We have some new leadership there, which has been really fun because they're really willing to try new ideas. And they're like, all right, we're all student run, but our full-time leads have the creativity to let us do our thing. So that's been really cool to do on campus. And as well, as you know, student radio is just huge for what we want to do. So WMUC Sports at Maryland has been really great. Really fortunate that my roommate and I are both going to be sports directors of the station for this incoming year. So it'll be an interesting year for Maryland football, but excited to cover it. It should be a quarterback battle again, so we'll see what happens with week one, just over a week away. But WMUC Sports, Big Ten Plus, and then doing some video and TV stuff for Terrapin Sports Central has been a ton of fun on campus so far.
Absolutely. And before we dive into all that stuff, one I got to mention with Maryland football real quick is didn't you guys a quarterback transfer out? That's the reason for the quarterback battle, correct?
We did, yeah. Quarterback battle for the second straight year. So he's going to Wisconsin. Billy Edwards was our starter last year. I'm fortunate I'm going to be making that trip to Madison this year with my roommate Daniel Stein to cover that. So we'll see Billy again. But yeah, we quarterback battle last year, and I think that's just what Mike Locksley likes to do. He likes to keep it all behind closed doors until that very first drive against FAU next week. I think it'll be the true freshman Malik Washington, but you never really know in College Park.
No, and I don't blame him for trying to keep it behind doors and trying to keep it secretive. I mean, I think this year, or at least within the coming years, it's going to start becoming more public information, especially
Yeah.
with its injury reports. But I mean, I don't blame him. Take advantage of it while you can.
Yeah, I think Malik Washington, like he's a true freshman coming in, like from Archbishop. So like a Maryland guy, it's been tough both for football and men's basketball to keep like DMV products home a lot. So like Malik Washington's definitely like this coveted treasure right now. And I think if it's not Washington, we got a transfer from UCLA and Justin Martin who just came in. They go with Martin, I think that's gonna be a really short leash for Martin, just because like everyone in Maryland, it's pretty good fans actually for the Terps. So they're gonna be clamoring for Washington no matter what.
Yeah, I went out there last year when Iowa was at Maryland for the football season, and I have to make the comment of saying like CQ Stadium. At first, I was like, I don't know, you don't hear too much about it. Weirdly enjoyed it quite a bit,
Yeah.
quite a lot. I liked the design. I kind of like turtles. So when I see the turtle statue, the terrapin statue there on the field, and then you got the shell they run out of, I thought it was creative with the space they had.
It's one of those sports too where since you go from the ACC to the Big Ten in 2014, you lose some of those rivalries and lose some of the excitement. That's at least what we hear in Maryland. But it's a big stadium too. So like you get Penn State in town, it will be like 60% Penn State fans, but Maryland fans will still show their own too, especially when the football team's doing good. Last year was a definitely down year, but three straight bowl wins before that was pretty cool.
No, absolutely. And then I have to ask you about this. I didn't even think about it until you mentioned again Big Ten Plus. Your guys' new guy, Lucas Mayer, correct?
Yeah, yeah, you know Lucas, right?
I know Lucas. I have to bring it up because he was the intern at Iowa before he went over to Maryland for Big Ten Plus, and I like slid into Big Ten Plus my freshman year, the last month or so. So I met Lucas a little bit. I worked a few games with him, but I just remembered he went over to Maryland.
Yeah, I forgot he was a Hawkeye too. So it's Lucas Mayer and Alex Baker are two full-time leads there. And again, they're like willing to say, hey, we've never done this before. We have a bunch of 19, 20, and 21-year-olds like leading this whole show, but sure, let's try it out. So their creativity has been awesome. Like we go back to the men's basketball season, and two of our seniors are calling the game. But Alex and Lucas had this idea to do a no break show. So we didn't send it to commercial once. And I was an on-camera talent. So we had me and Nate Schwartz, one of our seniors who just graduated. We hosted this like sideline reporting type show. So we it looked like college game day where you have like the high top table on the court. We did that. We interviewed our athletic director, and it was like this idea that Big Ten Plus had never really tried before. But Lucas is great. Alex is awesome with him too. And again, their creativity just lets us do new stuff.
No, that's something I want to kind of go back and see and everything. Maybe show it to our guys. Like, hey, maybe we should start sliding this in,
Sure.
especially for basketball. But again, we'll dive into all those experiences. But I first want to learn about your start in sports journalism. What was it that really brought you in and you said you wanted to do this?
Yeah, yeah. So I think that old adage or what kids say of like, oh, I love sports, but I knew I was a scrawny little kid. I was not going to ever play professional sports. I think it's partially true. But I think I really started understanding that like sports journalism was what I wanted to do when I was probably about 8 or 9 years old. And I think, again, I've heard the thing of like people are playing Madden and all of a sudden they're calling the game and they want to do that. It's kind of the same way. I remember watching a couple of Super Bowls and hearing old broadcasters just describe the guys and tell the story of the guys. And that's what's always interested me most in sports journalism is this storytelling aspect. I think you see so many different things on the field, but when you can humanize athletes in the context of a game and what they're doing and why it's special, that's really what's always opened me up to sports journalism. So I was probably 8 or 9 years old, and then I was really fortunate that my parents were able to send me to a play-by-play sports broadcasting camp, where I met a ton of friends, but also got some good experience. So there's a traveling camp that Jeremy Treatment and Stephen Goldstein run. Yeah, play-by-play sports broadcasting camp, and they'll just do a week in every city. And so when they came to Boston, I did that. I think in maybe end of elementary school, going into middle school. And I really just it was just literally like 100 kids who love sports journalism, like the idea of sports broadcasting, just like all together for a week on a college campus that was quiet. So I did that for 5 or 6 summers. Made really good friends who I still keep in touch with today. And some of us have stopped sports broadcasting and journalism. Others have gone on to do different schools. So I know a couple of kids from that camp who go to Syracuse, and I went up to Syracuse last semester just to say hi and check out what they got going on over there. So that really ignited like an interest in, hey, this is something I could see myself doing for a career. And then once I had that, I kind of got to high school and I was like, all right, what experiences can I get that would set me up for college and then get college experiences and keep going from there. So I was fortunate about the broadcasting camp. And then I was fortunate to also go to my high school where our local TV channel used to be in the high school. And then they got enough funding, so they just moved down the street and left all their equipment there. So we got to use that during class and to do that for some of the sports that we were covering. So I was fortunate to cover varsity sports throughout high school. That kind of got all right, I want to do play by play for sure. And that's kind of just taken off since I got to Maryland.
Absolutely. And just so I like just to clarify for me, it was truly you're calling games play by play throughout high school.
Yeah, yeah. So I was super fortunate that the local cable access channel, I'd known some people there, and I showed an interest in eighth grade. So I was calling varsity baseball since I was in eighth grade, and said, hey, like I just want to come and shadow and be a sponge. And I think I did like my eighth grade year, my freshman year, I think I did color the whole time. Like I just sat back, watched some of our older guys, both seniors and older guys in the community, 70, 75-year-old guys who just love being around high school sports and covering it. Just sat back and watched them too. So that started in eighth grade, and then into high school, I was doing that. COVID kind of stopped things a little bit. I just met with one of my high school mentors for lunch right before I came down here. And it was funny. We were talking about like broadcasting during COVID. Like we would do on Zoom, we would be broadcasting track meets, or we try new things. I did a swim meet on Zoom once, broadcasting with some of these guys, and I remember I'm at my house and a fire truck comes by, and like the sirens are going crazy like outside my door. I can't do anything. Pete Royce is my high school mentor. It's like, Pete, you just got to keep going. I got to mute myself and you do your thing. So that threw a loop, but to do 5 years of high school broadcasting, I think really set me up for what I wanted to do at Maryland, and then be open to new experiences. Because now that I'm at Maryland, that was all in the past. And I've really been fortunate to get new experiences there. And I've used some of that to become more of a leader because, again, you probably see at Iowa, you don't really ever know what experiences people had in high school before they get to college. Some people did a bunch of broadcasting. Some people have never put on the headset before. So that's been fun to use that experience and kind of keep myself going at Maryland.
No, it's absolutely true with the different experience levels. And you mentioned that it's a whole new experience at college. So even having all this background, how did you get your start and get your foot in the door at Maryland?
Yeah, I was really fortunate for the class that was two classes ahead of me. So the senior class that just graduated, I got to learn under for 2 years. They really took me and a couple of other kids in my class under their wings. So I had, said I was going to Maryland, posted, hey, I'm excited to go to the Merrill College at Maryland and be involved in their sports broadcasting. And then I had a couple of people with Big Ten Plus and WMUC Sports both reach out to me and say, hey, if you're interested in broadcasting or if you're interested in the production side, come check out both of these organizations. So I kind of had the foot in the door before I got into campus. And now, as a junior and I'm going to be the incoming sports director, I'm trying to do that with high school kids now, too, and trying to pay it forward and say, hey, if you want to be involved with us, we're always looking for broadcasters, always doing some different stuff. So I had known about both organizations going into it. And then one of the big things at Maryland, which we've continued now with my roommate and I both being sports directors, is the way we look at it at Maryland is we're always looking to get kids on air. And we're like trying to say that the way to get better at broadcasting is to broadcast. So we really try to put an emphasis on being at all Maryland home sporting games. So I saw that my freshman year where I showed an interest. I showed my availability, and I was calling a women's soccer game before my first day of college classes. I think it was Maryland James Madison, and I was awful, right? It was a terrible broadcast. I'd never done it before. But once that first broadcast is out of the way, then you can get the second broadcast out of the way and the third broadcast. So the senior leadership that we just had graduate, they were huge, both as friends and colleagues, to show me, how to be a college student and what broadcasting in college is like. But then that availability of saying, we know that you're a freshman, we know that you haven't taken that first like Math 100 lecture yet. Like it doesn't matter if you're here and you have an interest, we're gonna get you on air and get you some experience to kind of keep building off of that.
No, I love that. I love that you guys are trying to get everyone in because that's the one thing with our student radio, KRUI Sports, is well, let's just say for basketball, it's a longer season. We just send out a Google sheet. Everyone at least sign up for one or two games, and then we'll start filling out everything else, trying to get everyone on because it is getting those reps in that is so beneficial.
That's the biggest thing too. Like I know that my freshman year, I was not expecting to call football. I was not expecting to call men's basketball. If I think whether you're at Maryland, Iowa, anywhere, if you show an interest in broadcasting and understand, hey, I might call women's soccer or I'll call field hockey or I called my first real crack into Big Ten Plus. My freshman year was calling every gymnastics meet on Big Ten Plus. And our leadership was like, yeah, can you call gymnastics? And I was like, yeah, for sure. Yeah, I've done that in high school. No, I've never, I don't know one, I don't know anything. But a willingness to learn the sport, to get your foot in the door for student radio or Big Ten Plus, any way you can is just huge.
No, I think what's fun is we mentioned like our first broadcast, or at least you mentioned your first broadcast, and I can attest for myself that I really didn't put on the headset much before high school. I did a lot of broadcast stuff, but I maybe once or twice I threw it on. In college, I threw on the headset, and I can remember my first broadcast, and I was just color, and it was fine, but I know I would cringe if I listened to it. Do you think a lot of that first broadcast stuff is just working out some kinks, trying to figure out who you are as a broadcaster, or is it a lot of nerves?
I think it's for sure both. Like I remember I was I went into that first broadcast. I don't know if you were the same, but I went into it and I was like, all right, I'm fortunate. I'd done high school broadcasting. I've done this for 4 or 5 years. I know what I'm doing. And you put on that headset, new environment, it's just a different ball game. It's just different. And not in a way to say that it was more challenging or kids shouldn't be willing to go give that experience a try. But I think the nerves were there and it just wasn't as clean as you think, right? Like I think I went into college and I was approachable and welcoming, but I also thought like, hey, I've done this before. Like I know what I'm doing. I can do it. And I got humbled real quick. I got humbled very quickly in terms of saying like, no, you got to work on the fundamentals, especially for radio. Like you need to know time and score, the fundamentals, and what you should be looking for in a broadcast. So I think nerves and the fact that you just haven't done it before yet and the lack of quality there. I think those are both kind of mixing things in. And that's the only way to get that better, though, is by doing it and continuing to learn, listening back to your stuff, which is a big thing I tell my fellow guys at WMUC Sports is, hey, after a game, just listen to a quarter, listen to a half and see what things you can get better so that next broadcast, there's room for growth because you know what you want to fix.
Absolutely. I feel like that part is so huge. It's like, I mean, I compare student journalism, especially in the sports world, literally the playing the sport. It's like, all right, let's go back to the film. Let's listen to what I can do here. How can I train myself to be better in this way? I almost view it like it's practice, like I'm going to play a sport.
That's what you should do. Yeah, for sure. I just got finished up calling my first summer of calling summer collegiate baseball, and that was the first like experience of like, wait, I'm kind of doing the same thing I talk about these athletes doing, where it's like I put in my all, I do my preparation, the game happens, and it could be a good game, it could be a bad game. It's all about your response, and you know that it's not going to be the last game too, just like an athlete, right? Until you're like senior year high school football game, when you know it's a set date, like there's always one more to come. So how do you learn from that past experience, whether you're an athlete trying to be the starting quarterback or a broadcaster just trying to improve your own stuff? It all comes with listening and seeing what happened to then get better going forward.
No, absolutely. And I don't want to rush past this point real quick because I liked how you said putting on the headset is a whole different world. It's like, again, I didn't really call games in high school or before college, but I did. I was a director, producer, graphics, whatever for broadcast all throughout high school. So I understood how the broadcast worked. And again, that's what you mentioned of, I think knowing how the broadcasts work. I was talking to someone the other day about radio, knowing what times to come in and let maybe your color commentators have some more time, or maybe bring up the score again, or maybe just tell a story instead of just go about what's happening in the game. I think is also really huge to have a clean and nice sounding broadcast.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest thing is learning how to be a partner on a broadcast is huge. Whether you're the play-by-play guy and you want to steer the ship, but you also want to leave time for your color guy and let him shine. Especially, I've been fortunate that when I'm doing some of these gymnastics meets or wrestling matches for Big Ten Plus, we outsource someone and we bring in a former gymnast or bring in a former wrestler. Especially in those circumstances, like they are the expert. This is their sport. As much as I tried to learn gymnastics and learn what a full Yurchenko fold is, I will never learn it as much as she does. So that was really cool to see that and understand how to be there. Christina Chauvenet was our gymnastics color commentator, and she's great. So I think that's a good example of, yeah, you put on the headset for the first time, regardless of the role you're in, and it's just understanding who you're doing and how you can work with a partner to do that. And then to your point too, directing and producing is huge because you know what should be happening behind the scenes. I was really fortunate for my summer a summer ago in 2024 to be the associate producer for the Falmouth Commodores in the Cape Cod Baseball League, and to have that experience, knowing like when you should go out, when should you fly in graphics, when is there not enough time to do that. I think that just helped me better to be the Commodores broadcaster this past summer and knowing how it should look like on the back end too.
Absolutely. I feel like from both ends, you kind of help each other out. Like, let's say you're calling a game, you know what the producer might be looking for. You can help segue into that a little bit easier instead of doing something and then they hear you and they're thinking, "Oh Lord, we just completely were thrown off of what our plan was."
Yeah, yeah, it's all a team too. So I think broadcast meetings, we've done that for Big Ten Plus, and we'd have one over the summer at like noon every day. It'd be an informal FaceTime, but it's with the producer, the director, and the three on-camera talent. Just like, hey, what do we want to talk about, and when do we want to talk about it? So that by the time you get to the field, you have a rundown made, and you are on the same page of what the storylines of the game are, and that's one of the biggest things. And I think you notice it more when it doesn't happen, right? So like, if your producer and broadcaster are off the same page and the producer is flying this graphic about the bullpen pitching. But then your play-by-play guys are talking about the weather that day or how cool one of the hitters' new socks is. Like it just won't look good on TV or a broadcast. So I think you always got to be on the same page. And the experience for a broadcaster to know a producer's mindset just makes that so much easier.
No, absolutely. And I think a part that people don't really see when we go into a broadcast is the preparation. What do we have ready for this game? And you kind of mentioned it a little bit, but talk to me about your preparation. How does that look behind the scenes?
Yeah, so I think one of the biggest things, going back to that the point earlier about storytelling, is knowing that stats are important and stats can help show how good a player is. But if I'm a listener, I think my coolest moments are like not necessarily if a guy has 60 runs batted in, but if the guy just got here yesterday, or the Cape is a great example where like you'll have guys coming from Ohio who make that 12-hour drive to Cape Cod. They do it in one day, and then all of a sudden, like 20 hours after they leave Ohio, they're in the starting lineup and batting seventh. So those stories and like understanding those kind of angles, I think is the coolest part to preparation. Is if you can be a storyteller more than just a guy who just spews numbers. So I think that comes with building a rapport with the players that you work around. So whether it's at your college, going to midweek press conferences to hear from players and coaches and ask those questions that can really get the stories out, or if you're in a more informal setting like summer collegiate baseball, where you can hang around the turtle and talk to the guys casually. Oh, hey, welcome in. Like, how was the drive? How far was that trip? Like, asking those simple questions, like you would talk to your buddy on the couch while you're watching Monday Night Football. I think that's how you really get the best stories and make athletes humanized for your broadcast.
I'd absolutely agree with that, especially when you go down, like even before a Big Ten Plus call or a radio broadcast and talking to the coaches, the better human answers you get out of them, the more authentic your broadcast feels, 100%.
And the biggest thing too is like going back to that point about having color commentators. It's kind of similar when you talk to coaches. So we tried for Big Ten Plus. If we're calling a game on Friday, I'll send out an email Monday and just say, "Hey, I'm Ryan. I'm calling Villanova versus Maryland field hockey for Big Ten Plus. Like you are the expert on your team, right? The coach knows the team better than anyone. I have a couple of questions and I'm interested to hear a couple of things. That's a side point too. I think being curious is the biggest part in this industry. If you're a broadcaster, like to always be curious and be thinking what an audience might find interesting. That's the kind of way that you can determine what questions you want to ask a coach or ask a player. And again, they're the experts in their sport and their team specifically, so they can give you the best responses.
Yeah, I think telling those stories, again, as you mentioned, is absolutely huge. Do you have maybe a favorite story from your time this summer with the Falmouth Commodores you were able to tell over a broadcast?
Favorite story. Ooh. So one of the stories that was the coolest to do, I think, well, going back to last summer was one of the more interesting angles where we had a player from Air Force. So Chase Spencer was an outfielder from Air Force who came and played with us. So I kind of worked that as a producer too. But he had never had a media day when we hosted one in early June. He had never really been somewhere where like the athletics were really prioritized like you would in the summer college league. So he was with us for 2 weeks and to tell his story about like, hey, this is a guy who loves baseball, but he's also going to serve our country and he's going to go back. And I think Air Force would only let him be there in the month of June because he had to go back and get the new, I don't know if they're cadets or the new students at Air Force ready for what the year entails. So that was a really cool story to tell in terms of like, I think those are always cool. We will do military appreciation nights too, but guys who are like super great, obviously, at athletics, but they have a bigger meaning and a bigger why. So that was cool. And then not related at all, but our first baseman in Falmouth, Kent Schmidt, goes to Georgia Tech and he has this like hot dog bat that he's known for. And all of his like Instagram and Twitter bios are like, yes, I'm the guy with the hot dog bat. So we're just like, Kent, like what's up with the hot dog bat? What is it? And his hitting coach at the time at Georgia Tech and now his head coach and James Ramsey was talking to him and they were going over a film of some kind. And I think Kent's at first base, the story goes, and he's not paying attention. And Ramsey's like, yep, you look at Kent right here, just thinking about getting a hot dog after the game. And Kent's like, you know, I can do something with this. So then he goes to 44, I want to say, and they make him a custom hot dog bat that he used to just lead the ACC in average last year. So cool stories like that of like, again, it goes back to being curious of you ask a guy like, oh, why is there a hot dog on your bat? Or Air Force, how does that guy from Air Force get to Cape Cod? I think that's when you get the best responses. And guys love to talk about it because that's what makes them unique and special. So they know it's a story to share.
Again, it's what humanizes them. And for those listening, if you haven't seen the hot dog bat, I've seen an image of it. It's great. Look it
Yeah.
up. But I mean, with the whole idea of like telling those stories, again, the whole humanizing aspect of them, I just think that is what grows you again as a broadcaster. We've mentioned a few times already. And I think, again, being able just to ask those people, you gain that connection with the players as well, I feel like.
Yeah, I think you do. I think one of the biggest things that you can do, I think, for the broadcasting, if you want to like progress in broadcasting any role, I'm a real proponent of summer baseball and to be part of summer collegiate baseball. Because again, like you get to see athletes like totally understand the need for SIDs and any kind of interview, you got to go through a sports information director at college. But to really, again, I use that word humanize, like to be around the turtle at a summer college baseball league, could be on Cape Cod, could be in Alaska, could be in Florida, wherever it is. And all of a sudden, I think it's the first time you really see that these are 18, 19, and 20-year-old guys just like you. And they're caring about the new college football game that's coming out. Or they're thinking about like, oh, who am I picking my fantasy football draft? Like they're the same kind of guys that you are in a sense. And that really breaks down those barriers of saying like, oh, this guy's got cool stories. Like, what can he share with us that makes him different than the other 10 guys around him? And again, that's how you kind of progress outside of just numbers and stats and see these guys as just people, just like you.
No, I definitely agree, especially in the baseball world. Because, like, one, I am a baseball guy. It's what I grew up playing. And, like, for one, it's kind of a two-parter for me of like, I played with a lot of guys who are playing college baseball now, but also the summer college baseball thing where not this past summer, but the summer before, I was with the Hamilton Joes and the GLSCL, and we traveled on the bus with them.
Yeah.
And I mean, I'm in the bus playing Mafia in the back with these guys the whole time. And exactly, they're talking about fantasy football. We were all watching the MLB draft together on this bus. I mean, it is truly just a bunch of guys who are also playing baseball on top of everything.
You should have heard the 6'7" jokes that we had in our dugout this year. You would have thought these guys were like 10, 11-year-old dudes, which again, like, I mean, yeah, like my friends at school are probably going to do the same thing and be sarcastic about it. But you forget that these guys are, again, yeah, just kids too. And I was just talking with someone over lunch the other day where like, yeah, those are all super important experiences. How do you respect the guys on the bus, but also be a guy on the bus, but you don't want to be too into it. So you think that like they think that you're intruding on them, like learning how to be on the bus, be at the Turtle, represent guys when you're being part of the same organization is so huge. Whether you're team affiliated, like you would be there with the Joes, or if you're with Big Ten Plus and you're unbiased and covering both teams equally.
Yeah, this might be a tough question too. So, but like thinking about that part, do you have a way that you balance those two sides of being kind of one of the guys, but also keeping that professional level?
I think just knowing where it's not to intrude. So I think there's some spaces like we would never really go into the locker room, right? Like that's their space, that's their thing. Understanding what the shared spaces are. So if they're at the Turtle and just hanging around and not talking to anyone, like then they're one of the guys. Then it's just them and you, and you want to both build a rapport and also tell their stories. There'd be I'd probably use 20% of the conversations that we'd have with guys for actual nuggets or actual things to share. Like sometimes it's just saying like I saw this guy at the gym. So I'll see him at the gym if that's a shared space and like, hey, like nice hit yesterday and you build a rapport off of that. But just knowing that if there's a space where you should be right, like that could be a space where you could talk to guys and be one with them. And then I think if you're going to the locker room to take a picture of a lineup card or anything, say hi. You don't have to be a robot, but also know like that's kind of their space to be that away from everyone else. So it's definitely a delicate balance. I think it's one of the hardest things to balance, especially when you're team affiliated, right? Like if I'm Big Ten Plus, that's at school. That's a different ball game. I'm not going to go anywhere without NSID's permission or be anywhere where I'm not supposed to be. But when you're wearing the same logo as them on the summer baseball team or doing anything, I think it's just knowing when's a good time that they're not busy where you can talk to them and be somewhere you're supposed to be, or knowing that like, hey, like, this is just their space and this is where they do their thing, and I'll let them be there.
No, absolutely. I think that's a good point there. And I think it's a good way to see it too, of balancing their space and your own space. I mean, I was listening to a podcast with John Sadak, who is the play-by-play voice of the Cincinnati Reds. And that's pretty much what he was talking about. Of like the guy asked him, how often do you go down to the clubhouse and talk to the guys? And he goes, maybe 3 to 4 times a week max. And that is
Yeah.
because there's open media availability. And he doesn't go down like his own time. He'll go down during the media availability and he'll talk to him then. But he's like, outside of that, I'll go on the field and chit chat. But the clubhouse should be that's where they can get away from everyone because they're always constantly bombarded by guys. And I mean, it's not the same exactly at the college level, especially summer ball, but there's some level to that, I feel like.
I think there's definitely something to be said too about like you almost don't need to be hanging around the clubhouse, right? Like there's enough time at the Turtle, there's enough downtime. Like we had a rain delay, so I was talking to some guys a couple times. We were really fortunate on the Cape where we had no rain cancellations, which was crazy through the 40 game season. But we'd have a few rain delays, and that'd be a time where again we're just hanging around by the field. Then they're regular guys. Then they're 20-year-olds, 21-year-old guys. But when they want to go lock in the clubhouse, like who am I to go in and try to start a conversation with the starting pitcher or a guy in a slump, right? And be like, hey, like what's wrong right now? Like why can't you hit? He can hit way better than I can, whether he's 0 for his last 20 or anything, right? Like who am I to talk about that? So yeah, knowing that's their space, and then when it's kind of comes to a shared space, that could be a time where they're just humans.
Yeah, it's a great way to put it there. And I think also the balancing act of when you go back to school, you're balancing everything, all the experiences that you've talked about, as well as being a student and having your life outside of that. So, how do you balance being a student but also being a journalist, a broadcaster?
Yeah, that's a big question. I think it all comes down to knowing that like broadcasting is a ton, and that's why you're here at school, but it's also not everything. So we talk about this all the time in my apartment with friends at games and stuff of like we want to be really good broadcasters and progress, but we also want to have a lot of fun. Like we're here for 4 years. Iowa City looks like a blast. I'm excited to get there at some point. But you want to still be a college kid. So I think for me, what I noticed with that was a really big jump from my freshman to sophomore year, in all honesty, where freshman year I'm putting in a ton of work and I still work for sure, but I'm not missing a game. I'm not saying no to anything. I'm being available. And that availability is the best ability, and you want to be there. I think knowing that it's okay to say no because you have another commitment that's a college kid commitment is okay. Like the world will not end. You won't get taken off every single game if you say no to something from Big Ten Plus or student radio. Like you're a college kid and you're here for 4 years and you should work your butt off, but still understand that if you want to go visit a friend at their school, right, someone back home or anything like that, and you don't have anything scheduled, but then something comes up and you could do that game, you're allowed to say, "Hey, I'm out of town." Like that's okay. It's not a job yet, and it's still fun and should always be fun. But once it becomes a job and once you graduate, that's maybe when you have to say no to commitments outside of broadcasting. Right now, you're still too young to do that. So I think that's where I found balance so far.
I love getting to hear that a lot more because when you enter in the sports in general, broadcasting, journalism, or not, the big thing is say yes to any opportunity because it's so hard and sports is difficult to get into. But I think that's another thing I've told people, and I've had to tell myself a lot because I was one that never know how to say no.
Yep.
And it took away from some things. And I think that's a huge thing of college is the relationships you have and having fun with people. I'm lucky that the people I work with, whether it's at my TV station or at Big Ten Plus, I really enjoy being around, which makes it nice. And I love what I do, but also, a break every now and then isn't too bad.
Yeah, the balance is the biggest thing too. And I think I've my friends are awesome about it, whether they're broadcasting or they're at home or they're not broadcasting, but at school where like a Friday night I can come hang out. I might get there at 10:30 because I'm calling a men's soccer game before that. But they get it. And a lot of my friends are also doing it too. So that balance is super big. And like the work will always be there and you should always keep working. And I think one big thing I do is like if something were to come up, I like just weigh the simple pros and cons of is this something that like I can't say no to? And you're fortunate when opportunities like that arise. And those are opportunities you don't say no to. But if there's something that comes up, especially when you have something non-broadcasting that's a conflict with it, I think yeah, you got to have the confidence in yourself to say, I'm a college kid. Like I've talked to so many mentors before, and I get the common thing of like I almost never regret like broadcasting that extra game, but I do regret sometimes missing that party or I missed the hangout or missed a birthday because I was calling a game. So like to hear like those are the only like regrets, quote unquote, that people have, I think is great perspective to have while you're still in college and think about that balance.
Yes, it feels like you do have to have so much of a leg up. You do need to do so many things. I think that's why most of us have our student radios or TV station and Big Ten Plus or whatever affiliate your school does broadcasting with, and maybe even right on top of it as well. Is one, I mean, it's college. I think the nice thing is you can try so many different things, and you should. But the other point is you feel like you have to do so many things. So sometimes in my mind, or what I tell people is like, all right, when you're out of college, shoot, you might not have five different jobs that you're doing at once. Like you'll probably have one or two, maybe three, but I mean, it won't feel like you're doing all these different jobs as well as all your classes, which I mean, that's why it's also okay to maybe say no every now and then.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest thing too, with like getting your feet wet and saying, I want to have a couple of these experiences. And then once you have experiences early in college, you can decide what you want to do and then kind of lock in on it. And then you're right, that's how balance comes. If I was our field hockey beat reporter the first year, just as a writer. And I told myself I'm going to do Big Ten Plus and I'm going to do student radio, but I want to give writing a shot. I want to give production a shot. I want to try everything while it's here and while it's free and while I have an opportunity to do it. So I did a year of field hockey beat writing. Didn't hate it, but I knew it wasn't what I wanted to do. It took away from games and it took away from broadcasting. So I was like, hey, I tried this. It was great. I'm glad I had the experience, and now I know I don't really want to pursue this. So then once you do that and say maybe like everyone has their own kind of like this or that, right? Like, do I want to write or do I want to broadcast? Do I want to be on air for a broadcast, or I want to be in production more for the broadcast. And once you decide that, and it will like narrow down as you go through a college path, it's just all about giving yourself the opportunity to do those experiences that tells you what you want to do. And then what might even be more valuable is when you get taught what you don't want to do by having an experience.
Yes, sir. Take advantage of everything you can, especially at this time, exactly like you were saying. And I want to take a moment to kind of highlight everything you've done at Maryland. Again, you mentioned being the co-sports director at WMUC. Is that correct? WMUC?
Yep, it is.
Yeah, you guys is student radio there at Maryland. So as a reminder for people, tell them what that is and kind of what your experience is with them.
Yeah, so WMUC Sports is our student radio station at the University of Maryland. I think we're going on 50 years or so, which has been pretty cool to see. This year, we're really excited that we're kind of grouping back in with WMUC FM, so the actual radio station at Maryland, where WMUC Sports would have the same name as WMUC FM, the radio station, but be a bit more separate in the past. So we're working with their leadership right now to get onto the radio station and to have more weekly sports talk shows. We've been fortunate to have a Mixler subscription with WMUC Sports, but we're not actually on the radio, right? So we're radio style, but you could only find us online, which is great. But I think the opportunity to work in with WMUC FM and be on the radio and right, like being with where more listeners are and to approach your audience that way is really cool. It's been a fun challenge for us to navigate as we bring in new sports leadership. And my roommate Daniel Stein has been great and kind of leading that ship and saying, like, hey, like, what do they need for us, right? Like, we're talking and we're communicating consistently over the summer before we even get to Maryland, and saying, like, we're excited to be part of it. If you need us at weekly meetings, if you need us to fill out more paperwork, whatever you need for us to, travel for football, be on the radio airwaves is super great. But I think everyone should take advantage. If you're interested in broadcasting, go find your student radio station, whether it's live broadcasting or sports talk shows or whatever. I think we talk about the experiences that you have in college that can show you what you want to do post grad. I think student radio has so many different opportunities to do stuff that it's a no-brainer to get involved with.
Yeah, I mean exactly what you were saying. It could be play by play, it could be color, it could be literally just a talk show. We've got guys who will wake up and do a 7 a.m. show and they'll just talk about I had a guy that I knew that literally just talked about wrestling for an hour, and it was the most
Yeah.
random things he could think of. Or there'll be people that talk about anything going on in college athletics for an hour at 7 o'clock in the morning. So
Right. That's the experience that you want to have. I know wrestling's big there in Iowa. I
it
covered Iowa Maryland wrestling for sure, and Iowa whooped Maryland. But
no, it is huge. And like back in Cincinnati, it's not the biggest thing in the world. Like we had like in high school, decent wrestling team. We had a few guys who were really good, but then you go off to Iowa and I mean, it's ridiculous. One of my first meets was Iowa Penn State men's wrestling, which is pretty much 1 and 2. And Carver Hawkeye Arena hosts about 15,000 people. Obviously, it's sold out. And I'd been there for like a sold out basketball game, but nothing is like it. My best way to describe the sound was just like put AirPods in with like max crowd noise, turn all the way up, and you might get close to it.
yeah,
I don't know. It was really weird because I don't know if you've seen the way Carver Hawkeye Arena is designed at all, but it's truly like you've heard about the big house at Michigan. You go straight down pretty much.
same thing at Carver.
It's pretty much the same thing. You go in from the top and you go straight down. So it's all over top of you. And I mean, the way that sound bounces off in there is
Yeah,
ridiculous.
crazy. I gotta get there for a game for sure. Yeah, the craziest atmosphere I've seen at Maryland. Maryland men's basketball had a great year. We made the Sweet 16 run, and there was a couple good games against Northwestern. Michigan State had that buzzer beater against Maryland, so to be there was cool. But the Xfinity Center is where we host basketball games, and one of the craziest atmospheres I saw was when I was doing video coverage my freshman year for the Big Ten Wrestling Championships that we hosted at Maryland, and to see how Iowa traveled all that way. Penn State made the drive down, and Penn State was half the gym, and it was just nuts. It was crazy. Like Big Ten wrestling is Big Ten wrestling for schools like Iowa. But when you see that there's a fan base, like I saw that, and then I started calling more Big Ten wrestling my sophomore year. I was like, okay, like there's a market for this. Like people are interested. People in Iowa City like love wrestling. So when the Hawkeyes came to town, we kind of turned that up a notch for our Big Ten Plus broadcast. It's really cool to see and to kind of see like those non-rep sports still have as big, if not bigger, of an audience for some schools.
I know. And my best way of almost describing it for wrestling is just Like think about a sold out basketball game. It's going to be loud. People are going to care. But the people that are going to these wrestling meets love wrestling. They got to love wrestling more than you can imagine. And when all of them know exactly what's going on and all of them are really into it, I mean, that's an atmosphere that is really hard to compare to.
Well, in Iowa too. So with two of your biggest sports are probably wrestling and women's basketball, right? And like there's no real professional sports around that area. So like if you're a diehard for that, you're a diehard.
No, absolutely. That's exactly what it's described as. People here describe Iowa as their professional team because it's weird because when I went into college, I went in almost thinking I was going to give up journalism and go in for just sport and rec management only. And one thing that is nice about Iowa and their sport and rec management program is they have some good experiences, but they were talking to me and they're like, yeah, sure, we don't have a professional team here, but we're within 3, 4, 5 hours of all these different teams, Minnesota, Wisconsin, go over to Illinois, go down to Missouri, which is, I mean, give or take, whatever it is. And obviously, like in Cincinnati, we have the Cincinnati Reds, the Bengals, like you're right there. But that was one of the things they drew you in on, but they also were like, people will care and come here because this is their professional team. That's exactly what it is.
I think that's the biggest opportunity you could have as a student broadcaster too. Like you go do a Big Ten plus wrestling match. I think I remember someone saying it's very likely that the biggest audience for a single sport and a single team at Big Ten Plus is Iowa wrestling. Like the biggest team that they cover is Iowa wrestling. So I think it's a huge opportunity for you and the kids in Iowa of like you're basically professional broadcasters. If you're getting those eyes and the attention, and that comes with responsibility, but it also comes a ton of fun because I think sports, the biggest thing with sports are if people care, like that just it elevates it for me. And like that's why I want to do it, right? Like if you have the eyes and you have the interest and you have the packed arenas, that's the interest in what you're doing and covering stuff that matters for other people, which is sick.
You want people to care, and you're exactly right with like the Iowa wrestling thing. I remember Iowa State was in Iowa City this past year, and that game stayed on Big Ten Plus, which had like never happened in years. We thought the network was going to pick it up. So the amount of meetings that we had that week, I was like involved in like a few things, but I was in Maryland actually for the Iowa football game during that meet, so I couldn't be there for it. But the amount of meetings that week with Iowa coaches, Iowa State coaches, some people from the network trying to get everything possibly figured out was again the most effort you put in because it's that big crowd you're going to get.
Right. Yeah, we'll have some of those like tier one plus broadcasts sometimes for Big Ten plus, which I'm sure Iowa and Iowa State would be. And like that's the ones where we try to add on those extra elements. Like where can the bells and whistles come here? When Iowa came to town for wrestling, we had that was a tier one plus, and we had a sideline reporter, like a mat side reporter for wrestling for the first time. And that's something with Lucas Mayer and Alex Baker, again, like showing the creativity and trying out things we've never tried before. But we're like, no, like we have Iowa coming to town. There was not going to be an empty seat in the gym, and there's going to be a ton of eyeballs on our broadcast for people who can't make it out of Iowa City. How can we dress it up? And I think that's what makes Big Ten Plus cool, or ACC Network Extra, or whatever students have at their own school. Like if you have an opportunity like that to work TV broadcasts and see how a control room sets up, communicates with their broadcasters, and puts together a piece, it's a great experience for school.
Yeah, I mean, it's a number one experience. I remember hearing about it going in. Big Ten Plus is really beneficial, but I want to mention your other experience at Maryland. I believe the Maryland Baseball Network is you
Yep.
involved with as well. So just share what that is exactly and how you got involved there.
Yeah, so the Maryland Baseball Network is something that is a really cool part of going to Maryland if you're interested in student broadcasting. I'm trying to remember all the names. So Jake Eisenberg is the current radio voice for the Kansas City Royals. Him and John Vitas were two of the three who set up the Maryland Baseball Network about a decade ago. I think they just celebrated 10 years. Um, so at Maryland, WMUC Sports will cover pretty much every sport for student radio, not as a flagship, but as a student radio outlet covering it unbiasedly for every sport besides baseball. So baseball, we are really fortunate to be the flagship radio station of Maryland baseball. And what it started about 10 years ago with Rob Vaughn still here. He's at Alabama now. And Matt Swope was a hitting coach at the time. And Swope loved coverage. And he started the Maryland baseball Twitter account. And he reached out to some students. He reached out to Jake. He reached out to John. And he said, like, hey, I'm interested in we want broadcasters. Like we want full-time broadcasters. with us, and we think you guys can start it. So then the Maryland Baseball Network is born as, again, the flagship radio station for Maryland baseball, and it's all student run. So we'll travel with the team and stay with the team on every road trip. We'll be at every game, which is so difficult to do for student radio. Like we'll get to every football game with the money that we raise for ourselves, but we can't get to every basketball game. We can't make every trip we want. So we're really fortunate that, with baseball being like that sport, right? For radio, it's how you grow and how it's developed. That's why, again, I'm so pro on summer college baseball. The Maryland Baseball Network has been an incredible opportunity to travel with the team. Like, again, like how do you go to midweeks on the road, and how do you interact with players on the bus and be part of the team, but not too much where they feel intruded on. So that's been great to do, and I'll be really fortunate to be the station director of that come the spring, with Daniel Stein again. So the Maryland Baseball Network is an opportunity that like a lot of students aren't like fortunate to have, because there's either like if you go to Nebraska, they're covering baseball, or Illinois. Like anytime we go to these games, like we're the flagship guys, but we're meeting 30 to 35-year-old broadcasters who are the voices of those schools. So that's been an incredible opportunity that's probably what I'm most excited about having at Maryland for sure.
Yeah, I like being able to talk to some of those guys who are the voices or the pros and really get their key ideas on things, or whether it's just for that broadcast in general, or just like, hey, what's your advice? Can I pick your brain about this and that there? So congratulations on that, by the way, getting the director role there as well. But with Maryland having all these different experiences, different jobs, how do you feel like Maryland has best guided you into being the broadcaster you are today?
Yeah, that's for sure a loaded question. There's so many ways to go with it. Um, I think, again, coming from Boston into Maryland, I think when I was looking at schools, the biggest things I thought was I wanted an established journalism program and somewhere where the athletics mattered. Like those are the two biggest things. I didn't really care if it was a 15,000 or a 45,000 person school. I just wanted somewhere with those two things. And Maryland has really set me up for success because of that. Being so close to DC, people might not know we're 15 minutes outside of Washington, DC in College Park. So I've been fortunate to just take the train in, whether it's for dinner with friends or to go see a game with friends, or if it's to go shadow a sports anchor or to go get an internship. That's been really cool to do. And then all the experiences that we mentioned, I think, is what's made Maryland unique and what's set up Maryland of we're a spot where the athletics matter, but we also have a smaller journalism program, which means you can really work well with the people around you, and the reps are there again to get kids who are interested on broadcast pretty much right out of the gate to make those first mistakes and then learn from it. I think that's what I've learned from Big Ten Plus, WMUC Sports, Maryland Baseball Network too, where even MBN is something where we have a higher standard. We're the flagship station, and you can't just really walk in and get on a game there. But like that's baseball, and that's calling baseball consistently and being somewhere that matters to when you get the listeners to do so. So location, athletics, the Merrill College has been really fortunate. Like we have great resources at our J school, who have like really put us on a track for career success with. And they're like, hey, like make sure you try A, B, and C out when you're still here because that'll make you more versatile before you go. Has been a really cool experience, and I'm just excited that I'm only halfway done with it.
Yeah, and this one is another one you can go in any direction with, and maybe it builds off of exactly what you're just saying. But why do you feel, from your experience, that student journalism, student broadcasting is so important for people to pay attention to?
We talk about this all the time in Maryland, for sure, especially being in a political atmosphere and being right in DC. I think the world needs good journalism, period. I think we talk a lot about where does the AI cross over into journalism, and with fake news being fake news and people really getting concerned about that, how can people have somewhere to trust whether they're watching, the Bengals playing the Patriots on a Sunday night football game, or if they're tapping into CNN to see what's happening in the world? I think good journalism is important, and I think you can start that by teaching good journalism in school. And so I'm fortunate that both broadcasting and just with journalism classes overall, taking a lot of political journalism classes being at Maryland, they teach you how to go about things the correct way, the moral way in terms of reporting or calling a game or anything. So I think that's the biggest thing, and that's where I want to see student journalism continue to evolve into, is always having an emphasis on truthfulness and seeing how you can be a voice in a time where I feel like we need a voice in this country.
No, very well stated there. And I want to ask you this before we go in a little bit of a lighthearted direction. Do you maybe have a favorite call that you've had on a broadcast explicitly, maybe something that ended a game or was in the middle of it you thought really hit the spot?
Ooh, we had a senior for Maryland wrestling. I want to say it was against Northwestern, and it was senior day, and he had a pin at the last second, like a pin to win the match. And Maryland wrestling hasn't been too great recently. Like every Big Ten win is big. And Michael North was a senior who had gone through a couple injuries, gone through a couple losses for himself personally, and like again, the storytelling aspect and the being like triumphant. To be the voice of him getting that pin on senior day, I think was the coolest thing I did. And I don't remember the call exactly, but I remember I encapsulated the moment, and then you're on TV. And the best part about being on TV is you can shut the heck up and just let it happen. So I remember voicing the moment, being excited, and then letting his teammates' hugs and the crowd's reaction do the talking, and then you kind of evolve from there and seeing that too. So I'm excited for a few more. Our Tyler Lochte was a senior who just graduated. He got to call Maryland versus Colorado State in the Dairy Queen buzzer beater. He had a great call for that. There's been a couple cool moments as that. So I'm excited to see if there's more, but as of now, that senior moment is cool because again, it's always more than a game for these guys.
Yeah, that's a great moment too. I like that you're able to kind of let it breathe, let the fans take in that moment as well. As I think that really encapsulates what it feels like when you're at home. When I'm watching a game, I can feel what that audience is seeing.
Yeah, I think the most impactful moments, like we have crowd mics for a reason, right? Like you have crowd mics and you can see through a camera in the TV because that's how you can encapsulate it. Like great radio broadcasters will dictate and show the emotion that's happening and share with the audience, but nothing can see the emotion and what it means more than like the human eye and seeing that and hearing it through crowd mics. So sometimes it's just best to be quiet and let it all happen out in front of you and then devolve from there.
A good crowd mic speaks volumes. I love that. And I mean, a good thing about student journalism in general, whether it's sports or not, is broadcasting networking is very huge. So an opportunity here for yourself to plug any of your own work, give a shout out to any of your socials for people to take a look at after they listen to this.
Sure. Yeah, I'm always interested in connecting. It's cool that you reached out, Colin, just to learn more about who's around you in college broadcasting. So, yeah, we'll be at WMUC Sports. So that's as it is, WMUC Sports on X or Twitter and on Instagram. You can find me on X at Ryan Martin PXP. And then I'm also on Instagram over at Ryan Martin Media. So I use both of those just as a way to kind of keep track of what I'm doing and stuff and share with it. But if any broadcasters are interested in learning more, talking, sharing your experiences, Ryan Martin pxp at gmail.com. Be great to hear from you.
Absolutely. I'll make sure I link everything as well. But again, Ryan, thanks for spending some time with me today here on the Student Beat.
Thanks so much, Colin. I appreciate it and have a great semester with everything you're doing in Iowa.
You as well. I appreciate it. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Student Beat. I heavily suggest that you check out all of Ryan's work with the links provided. Even for the few minutes that we were talking off camera, he's the same guy and he's amazing to talk to. And it should be an incredible season for Maryland athletics. And if you want to stay up to date with all upcoming episodes of the Student Beat, make sure to follow me on Twitter at C_Carithers33 or at the Student Beat. You can also follow us at the same on Instagram and TikTok. We just walked the Student Beat. I'll see you next week for a brand new episode.